Hi, I'm Cinnamon Cooney, your Art Sherpa, and I would love to show you how you can paint this adorable, sweet painting of ballet slippers with a tulip. It's a lot easier than you think. It's a lot of fun. Now, you can do this single painting, and that's completely cool, but I did want to let you know that this is part of a 30-day painting program that you can do. On the mic is my husband, John.
Hey, guys.
He's going to make sure that you have the best possible time in this art lesson by zooming in with our cameras and making sure that you see the techniques, you see the mixes, everything you need to do to succeed at this painting yourself. So get your paint, get your brushes, come back and meet me at the easel right now. You can paint this. Today's colors are Mars Black, Burnt Sienna, Ultramarine Blue, Phthalo Green, Cad Yellow Medium, Naples Yellow Light, Cad Red Medium, and Quinacridone Magenta with Titanium White. So to start this, we're going to want to paint the entire surface a mixture of our ultramarine and burnt sienna. And to get a nice mixture, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take about half of this and half of this and mix them together. And it may take the full range of both of them to do this, but it's nice to start with something and then see if you need more. I've certainly got more paint here if I need it. I'm going to paint everything this color, and then we're going to go on to the gridding. So paint everything this color. So we have this entirely painted and dried. A little note that I want to tell you is that the mix of burnt sienna and ultramarine can be a little transparent, can be a little streaky, and it can take a little bit of work to get a good surface going with those two colors. I find sometimes I've got to get it on, dry it, and then do another layer of it to get the effect that I want. Really just go by how your paint is going. It's not supposed to be like completely streakless or completely in even coverage, but it should give you a deep value that you're working from. Now I'm going to take a tool called a T-square, and I'm going to take my chalk tool and I'm going to grid out a 1 by 1 inch grid on the surface. When the grid is on, I'm going to mark numbers 1 through 8 across the top and 1 through 8 across the left side going from top to bottom. Once I have those in, I will use my grid reference to allow me to sketch in the image free-handed, but not like so overwhelming the way free-handed can be sometimes. So all I've got to do when I'm doing this method is that I follow the line that I see entering and exiting just one of the squares. So I just draw what I see in that square, and I don't worry about capturing the whole thing. So that's step one. And a couple notes on step one is this this image is deceptively complicated, isn't it, John?
Mm-hmm.
The folds of the fabric, the way the shoes are crumpled, the way the ribbons are folded, this is challenging in the way that a rose can be challenging. So just remember when you're doing this to slow down and take your time. You can always go back and redraw because it's just chalk. Step one is done. I can't wait to show you step two. For step two, we're going to lay in our background and kind of start to paint in our furthest back objects. It's going to be a lot of fun, but it's also going to be fairly mellow to do compared to the gridding. I'm going to get my brush wet. This is a number 8 Cambridge. Because it's a mix of boar bristles and synthetic, I do want to pull out the extra water because it can get a little overwhelmed. I'm going to grab just my ultramarine blue and my white. And I'm going to begin to take this very light value, right? We want it right about here. It's not white, but it's definitely in that lighter range of colors. I just want a bit of the blue hue to it. And I'm going to paint in a very kind of relaxed way this background. And what I mean relax is I'm not going to be too smooth about my brush strokes. I want things to be kind of loose and fresh. You know what I mean, John? He's seen this happen a few times.
I have.
He's familiar with the loose and fresh. But what that basically means is it's okay if some of the dark background shows through. That's why we put it on in the first place. I would say your big thing is to try not to paint out the objects you have so carefully drawn in.
And the white chalk won't hurt anything.
The white chalk is not going to hurt anything on this piece. Now, here I may, as I'm coming around some parts of this shoe, I may get a little darker into the blue. Like, let's put a little darker value here. And I'm going to come around and put just a slightly darker value here. If I need to come back with my lighter hue as I'm coming around to sort of shape it, it's like we're first talking about that sort of first space of maybe some shadow under everything. We'll just use our value in this to determine that. Now you can paint everything neatly around the side, continuing the objects on. I'm going to paint expressively. It's really up to you. Just making sure that all looks pretty good. I've got to come back and lighten this. I can easily do that. And again, just trying to get around the value of these two objects and their shape and their contour. Around the tulip here. And I'm going to go ahead and paint under where I'm going to be putting leaves. That's mostly because I want to be very kind of fresh and loose with those leaves. Not too tight, not too painterly, not too tight, definitely painterly. So there's no point in getting those details in at this stage.
Now, how come you don't just paint the whole background like one blended color? How come you're like carefully painting around the flowers?
Because it gives a depth and a richness to the piece. The brown underneath helps the painting feel a little more resolved, a little more whole. You know, it gives us a warmth and everything. You might have noticed that some of the acrylic paint is a little transparent.
Ah.
And we can play with those transparencies to create continued depth in our pieces. And I like to. Because acrylic builds up well on layers.
So this is just like one way to get this effect. This is the way you like it.
It's one way to get this effect, and I do like it, for sure.
Because, it's like...
A little more blue. Here we go.
I know that... no, I just know we get a lot of questions of like, how come you do this order, which sometimes can seem counterintuitive to someone who's new. But it has to do a lot with how transparent and thick and, how well one kind of color covers, right?
It does, and it also has a little bit to do with color theory. Am I trying to create a harmony? Am I playing contrast against each other? Where little bits of the brown pick up, they actually do have, some nice drama that I can get into my piece that I do want. It adds a little drama.
So it's not that you couldn't get it other ways. This is just the way that...
There are always many, many ways to put a piece in and to paint a piece. This is just a nice way to be loose with our painting. I would say for me, in something like this, what's hard is to keep track of where the ribbons are and where the background is showing through the ribbons.
Yes, that... I can see that.
Go some nice little painterly stuff, and I can kind of dry brush over here. And so I do have some values, right? I have some lighter value kind of up here on the right-hand side, and where potentially these objects are blocking a small amount of light, maybe things have gotten a little more blue and therefore a little deeper. and create some shadows. That's really all you've got to do for step 2, which is pretty chill.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'll come back and show you what we're going to do for step 3. 3. You and me. 3. So the next thing I'm going to do is I noticed I didn't sketch in a little element of my shoe. I've got a little bit of a white insert that's showing here. And I'm going to take my number 6 and just make sure that I've got that thought out. I'm going to grab a little of my white and some of my magenta. I don't want that much. It's very staining. This is a very minor mix, and it's okay if the blue and the magenta sort of get together. And I'm going to come in here and make sure that I've got this part of the inside of the shoe sort of worked out, because that does help with what we're seeing a bit. As these little insoles come forward, they get darker. So we'll have to kind of, make sure those are darker. And I am using my number 6 bright here so that I can have kind of sharper, cleaner edges there.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be an interesting journey for me. I'm going to get a little more into my purple. So I'm taking a little bit of my ultramarine into my quin, and I may even add some brown to it. Kind of makes an interesting color that I like quite a lot. Not intuitive, but really pretty. And I'm going to make sure that where those would be showing, I've got that. So you can see I'm kind of getting the insides of that. There's also some of this deep value here. Crumbled up ballet slippers. Beautiful paintings. Certainly when you get in them, you realize that they are always a little more challenging than you might have thought. As we're coming back, a lot of the base of this one, I'm going to add just a little bit of white to this value. Maybe going to come here. A lot of the base of this has wonderful rose and mauve kind of reflected through it, so I like to catch as much of that as I can. I'm going to come around here and sort of just make sure that I've got some deeper values. There we go. That fun how we do that?
Get some depth fast.
Get some depth and kind of, a little bit lighter up here at the heel, darker at the toe. Rinse, 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 rinse. Anywhere you need to clean up or where you're putting the ribbons, it's a good time to do that. You can always overpaint what you need wherever you need it. Now, we've got a lot of interesting pink values, and how I'm going to get to my pink is I'm going to take my quinacridone magenta and my cad red, and I'm going to make this base color, and I'm going to use, interestingly enough, my Naples yellow light in it to sort of create a base. Isn't that wonderful?
Mm-hmm.
A very fun color. And you can get so many values across it just using those. And that's before I ever even get any white into it. But once I get white into it, it's a whole wonderful other thing. So let's look a couple places where we might be using some of that lighter value. I am doing some of the reflections that I might be seeing on the shoes. What's wonderful about ballet shoes is the satin is just almost mirror reflective. Like this reflection right here might be nearly kind of almost white. It kind of comes around here through the toe. And if you paint the reflections on the satin, you can get a really nice effect. Of course, painting them loose is always the challenge. And then also helping the ribbons feel like they're different than the shoe.
What do you mean by painting it loose is always a challenge?
Well, it's easy to spend a lot of time, worry over a space, a whole bunch. I'm going to get some magenta into this mix, kind of creating more of a pink. And when you worry over it and worry over it, the painting tightens up and sometimes you lose some of the fresh expression that you need. You can always tighten up. Even artists that are very realistic and objective in their work, it's good every once in a while for them to work on loosening up some, not all, but some of what they're doing. Can come in and always get a little cad yellow into that, creating these different interesting little values. Coming along here with that darker. So we're just going to play these little values against each other. And hopefully as we see them, it'll start to create a sense of what we're going for, right? Like, so if I come in and I get some of my lighter value here, and I can add a little pink to it if I want. Because satin is very reflective, kind of like a mirror, interestingly enough.
I guess that's why you have like gloss and satin finish.
That's why you have gloss and satin finish, because of the way they reflect light. That's very true.
It's very shiny.
Some things are super shiny. Some things are super shiny. Looks very cool. I know I've got a bit of a reflection coming around here. Sometimes I will wipe off my brush, but I don't want to rinse it. I just want to wipe it off. I may even get a little bit of my more Naples yellow in that, so there's some more kind of reflection here. The back of these heels often are very crumpled. I can always come in with a little bit of water if I need to smooth something out. And come back later with the light value I was trying to get in the first place. There we go. Not bad. And you just kind of check it every once in a while, make sure you're doing good. I get a little more of my Naples yellow into that and a little more white. It's fun to come in and be like, oh, there's some, highlights here. A little more pink one right there. It is a highlight, but it's just a little more pink. And then as we come back through, right, we're going to get deeper. You can work more magenta when you want it to be a cooler base on your little color wheel into the shoe. And that can kind of help you create zones and little value mixes as well, before you even add a little ultramarine to it. So you can kind of see that we're building these basic structures. You really see them more when you get away from everything on the little shoe. And then there's the little roll at the top of a ballet slipper. It's kind of like a little gathered edge. Just play with bringing those around. I might need to come back with a bit of that highlight. I come along here. Just starting to create highlights, shadows. If I've over painted anything, I'm not going to worry because I can just come back like this. hopefully not losing all of my ribbons and all the work that I have going on here. And that can be really challenging right now to see. Get a little bit of a dark value so I can kind of see the stitching. Making sure that we don't take on too much and we don't overwhelm ourselves is a really good idea. In step 3, I think this is a really good place to stop. That way we can take it in. You guys can evaluate that you've gotten to this place in
Mm-hmm.
your steps. And then when we come back on step 4, we're going to continue to resolve these ideas and moving forward on the ballet shoes. Again, I want to caution you to just work to the stage and not overwork yourself as we go into step 4. Make sure you've got your values and everything set by step 3. We go into 4, we continue on what we were doing. The shoe. I love this sort of toe because there's sort of a little more magenta into the mix. And then my fabulous Naples yellow. I like how the toe is my brown in there. Isn't that neat with the
Mm-hmm.
brown? I'm going to come across here and kind of create a bit of that, that pretty dark satin value. And that's kind of fun because it is so dark. And I can bring some of that in here. If I need to, I may have to put out more white, sir.
That's all right.
Again, it's just don't put tons and tons of pressure on yourself to like get everything right now. You just want to kind of take things in as you can. And we've always got room to come back and continue to refine any of these ideas. I like all the spots where there's wrinkles and there's just sort of different value sets that we've got to get in.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's interesting. But it's also challenging, I think, to know a little more magenta on this mix, how we're going to paint it in, how we're going to get all these little values and these little reflections across the fabric. And I think that's what stops us sometimes as painters, is trying to find those spaces. See them. I'm just getting these dark values.
Yeah.
And already you kind of see that there's this shine, this like reflection of shine or event that's going on.
You really can. It sort of makes the shoes wrap around.
And that's what we're trying to create, is that sense of that. And see, I just do a lot more magenta where I want a shadow. And in all of this, what we're not worrying about, I create one kind of up the center there. What we're not worrying about is using black to create a deeper value. So we've got a lot of our little shoe painted in. We still need our little kind of going around the edge part here. And I'll just get some white in this. And I'm not even using my round at this stage. I'm still kind of using my number 6 bright because I'm just getting everything. Sometimes you'll hear me say this on my other lessons, blocked in. It's the idea that, all right, I'm finding all these value sets. And I may have areas on the ribbon going around the shoe that are lighter or darker. But it'll help me just if I acknowledge that there's a ribbon going around the shoe, the binding ribbon that we have here. I need more purple, it's super easy to always get back into that because that ultramarine and the magenta make a gorgeous purple, different than the Doc's purple. And so you should be able to always go back in and make any adjustments that you need. I'm kind of trimming that up, making sure that that is how I want that to be. I may even come put some of that wonderful deep value there, kind of layering that back in. We're refining, aren't we? Maybe a slightly darker value, that shadow there. I love doing that. There's also some depth up here that I think is nice to catch. So maybe a little more burnt sienna, ultramarine, quinacridone. There we go. On the corner of the brush, pulling that around. Just trying to capture that small amount of deeper shadow that's happening there. Getting in those shoes. Now, let's also sort of refine and start to put in our ribbons that are happening, all in the same color ranges, right? So it is the quinacridone and a little cad red with a nice amount of Naples yellow, gives us that kind of great base ballet slipper color. And we can maybe get some of our highlights in there, taking my white and my Naples yellow. Let's find some ribbon that's in highlight. It's okay if you don't see all of them right off the bat. All the highlights right away. A little more Naples yellow. And chances are we're still going to be coming back with a bit of some value and stuff as we go. So, how you doing, babe? This is
I'm
kind
okay.
of an interesting one, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's a lot visually going on. I really have to step away from the objects and just sort of seat into the value to get through this piece.
I think that I'm having to similarly stay kind of focused on where, because there's a lot of movement on
Is
this one.
there?
Yeah. So it's kind of detailed.
It feels like very detailed. So it comes in an angle like this. Kind of paint that around. So that's a nice highlight. I can always lighten this up if I need to. And I will sometimes lighten it up. Oh no, lighter than what I've already painted. Even lighter. You know, wherever you need to get darker, it's pretty easy to go back and forth when the mixes are all part of that same kind of family. And I think that there's a lesson here that's good for any of your paintings that you're doing. Look, we can get that purple going into it and create a kind of shadow under the ribbon. And I think that's fun. But it is easy to get overwhelmed into what the objects are.
The direction of your brush stroke, is that important?
It can be. I would say in this one right now, value more than even brushstroke directionality should be on our mind. Bring this up here, that nice darker shadow. Because as these are in lower places, you know, they won't be as bright as when they're up in the light.
Hmm.
Seems obvious, but it's still like a thing we got to think about. And, you know, as we're going through, I'm going to get a little more pink into that and then some white. We have to, sometimes one ribbon will cast a shadow on another ribbon. And I'm just playing across those. So what I'm trying to do is go through here and kind of get the blocks of the value in. I'm going to trim up that line that got a little bit away from me. You know, say, all right, well, right here it's like this, and right here it's like this. I'm going to come back, you know, as you do. You know, trying to fold those, trying to see those, you know, in different ways. You've just got to get it down and then look at it and evaluate it. Be brave.
Hmm.
Right? And know, like, hey, yeah, sometimes this stuff is challenging. But that's the whole point. You know, we didn't start painting to not be challenged by anything. Probably started painting to be creative. And you don't want to let the experience of being challenged by something stop you from doing what you've got to do to get something in. And so it's super rough right now. But you're starting to see the planes, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we're looking for. Can we see those planes? A little more pink on here and say, all right, well, maybe coming from here, you know, this part of the ribbon might be a little bit darker. And then underneath on the fold, it's a little bit darker. I know where this is twisted, it's a little bit darker. And some of these twists are like, oh, to get, you know?
Yeah, I can see it.
But we're not going to worry and not do it because it's challenging. A little more red and a little more yellow. And there's a ribbon that connects. There's this ribbon coming out here, so I've got this guy to get. Lots of twists, lots of movement. A little more white. There we go. And again, just trying to see our twist and see our colors as we go through. Get back into this, a little bit of white. Because this twist here and comes back and twists a little bit here. A little more magenta. So much magenta.
Hmm.
Definitely some magenta, but not as much magenta as I got. I'm going to come right here and say, oh, maybe this has a little bit of a reflection right there. And I'll refine it in a minute, but I just want to talk about some of these things. Because it's only through value can I get one object separate from another object. So it's not just hue, it's value.
Hmm.
This is a real exercise in that.
There's a lot of it with the satin.
It's so much. And it's trying to find those little tones, half tones, mid tones, and getting those worked in. Woo, that was a lot. So let's say where we're at right now is step 4. So we're going to move on to 5. I'm not working on the tulip yet because I really want to save that to last. And now I feel like I want to refine some things on the shoe. I am going to get into my number 4 round. Just for the shape of the brush and the way I'm going to be able to get some pointed detail where I need it. And then I'll get back into my 6, but I just feel like I really, really want to capture some stuff. So I'm going to get a little bit of my Naples yellow light and my cad yellow sort of together. And with a little of that on my brush, right here, I'm going to find a couple places on the binding that are maybe brighter. I'm going to look for some highlights. That's the only way I'm going to find my way through this piece, is through the highlights and shadows. That's it. It's the only way through, sir.
That's it.
It's the only way through.
Just one layer at a time.
One layer at a time, man. There is no other way to get through it. You know, through here, we've got this very nice kind of reflection that comes down. And this brush, I'm just using it because it makes me more comfortable. And I know that I can control things. And I'll get some nice crisp edges where I want them. You can see I'm just putting some highlights through there. Let's say that there's some a little bit inside the shoe, so I get some of my lighter pink color. Not quite the yellow white, but still pretty light. And put that inside there. I've got some of that I maybe want around different places. Let's find some places for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is the stage you're going to start looking for certain types of highlights, the way that certain reflections are going to be.
This is also where I have to kind of back out a little bit because you jump around a lot.
Is it? Yeah, I think that it is tempting to jump around a lot. Let me get back into my white and small amount of yellow. Because
you see little spots where you want to add color and
yeah. I'm just trying to find those little lips and edges that are here. Now, here we go, finding lips and edges.
Painting the edges, those highlights.
Locating, different little...
You keep stepping back.
Trying to see the image. It's a complicated image. So, you've heard that saying, forest for the trees?
Yeah.
That's an easy place to get into in a painting. You get so deep into the painting that you're like, man, I can't even see this thing.
And so you keep stepping back to try to force yourself to
be able to see it.
Look at the whole thing, not just the little pieces.
Not just the little pieces. That's right. Because somewhere within the whole thing, if I find these little highlights here and there, I will have a nice composition. If I can get through it.
Funny enough, that's how I did the Pix bricks.
Is that how you did the Pix bricks?
Just same
These
thing.
skills carried over for you?
They did.
You're like,
into
yeah.
other mediums.
Catch a little pink. So again, we're just working it, right? See me
Mm-hmm.
working pink into my brush. Trying to capture the structural elements of these beautiful ballet slippers. I know many people, I think I feel this because I know many people are going to want to paint ballet slippers.
Yep,
It's a very popular art gift.
it is.
And it's okay to just have a minute, take a breath, get some pink on the brush. Always some room for some magenta and or base mix. I'm going to come through this and do these highlights, and then I'm going to come back through and do shadows, and then it's between the highlights and the shadows that the image actually is revealed, in my opinion,
Hmm.
which is correct. And now I'm starting to sort of relax into it. I can enjoy it a little more.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm adjusting, it, as always, is that value, and I'm playing with hue. I am still playing with some hue. Want to get a light value right there. I feel like I took this a little too far forward,
What do you
but
mean?
it's pretty dry, so the shadow color, I took it a little too far forward.
I'm going to zoom in there to see what you mean.
I was pulling it into something.
Oh,
Mm,
literally too far
too far
forward
forward.
on the picture plane.
On the picture plane, yes, exactly. On the picture plane, too far forward, that's what I'm talking about. I love the combo of these colors with a little bit of burnt sienna. They make an interesting kind of. I need to lighten a value. I can go into my Naples yellow, but I can also get back into my white. So it's like wherever I need to be. I need more white. The dance
Mm.
of highlights. And again, I will constantly be working, trying to get like the Naples yellow in there because it just warms it a bit. Even though it's a green yellow, it's still a yellow. It's still a yellow. Sort of an angle here and an angle there that I've got to catch. There we go.
You caught it?
I'm thinking maybe. I need to dip my brush in water to improve flow. I can. I'm working for it today.
Hmm.
I truly am, actually,
What
looking
do you mean?
forward. Well, some days, everything sort of flows in without any effort, right? We're not really trying, we're kind of just getting there. But some days, you've got to work
Yeah.
for every step of your path. And you're like, "Oh, what's that?" Right? You could try to see something, and then you're like, and you see like there's an interesting sort of light edge right here. I need even one lighter value. What I do is I'll come back and wipe off my brush and get into the white. Look at that. Where you need to, because there'll always be a little space where it's a little more reflected. Can you see how we're doing that?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we're looking for is our reflections. Our reflections. I'm going to come in here. There we go, just a little bit there. Constantly looking for what can I add? What can I take away? What do I have? What is there to do?
Mm.
And
Just
again, we will be playing not just with this, but also with uh, on this edge here, and then a little bit on the inside curve. And then on this outside coming down. Water if I need it, which I do. There's that. And then it comes here on the edge. There we go. Maybe a little yellow into this one. A little bright reflection right there. And it's okay. Carry a little on the lip coming over. And a little coming under. Still playing those. I think I'm kind of starting to get some of it. Hopefully you guys are starting to get some of it as well. You need a slightly lighter pink. Right here. Interestingly enough, there's also a fun little kind of curved reflection there. Maybe a little bit right there. That. Just finding those. And then you just keep looking. You're just like, are we closer? Are we closer? How close are we?
mm-hmm. This is really just all that step 5 is just wrapping up those little
Highlights.
highlights.
Just the highlights. So we've broken things down into smaller bites. We made it easy. All you're going to do is look for those highlights. When we come back, we're going to work on our shadows for step 6. Step 6, let's start putting in some shadows and refining some lines and getting some control of this piece while still remaining fairly kind of groovy and happy to be here. Now, if you'll remember, we're going to take a little of our magenta into our ultramarine, and that gives us that wonderful range of shadow colors, especially when we get our burnt sienna mixed into it. Wonderful for the slipper. I'm going to go ahead and kind of make sure I've got nice flow. And we're going to start putting in some shadows, maybe where we lost them. You can see just putting in those strong little bits of shadow can be super helpful in the long journey to the finish.
Hmm.
Capturing those bits, pulling back as you see stuff working out. I may need to put out a little more magenta. Magenta.
Mm. The most purpley
The most
of
purpley of purples.
pigments.
There we go. Just putting in some shadows where we're pretty sure we would have them. You know, places where we have stitches and seaming tends to often have a shadow.
Mm-hmm.
It's always good to look for those spots.
It's so crazy how when you add those shadows, it just.
Creates a piece.
Mm-hmm.
Fine little lines, little edges. It's always a good idea to get back and examine. Is what you're doing working? Mixing a little more of my cat and Quinn into the shadow mix just to give myself some choices in the shadows that we have. We do. When you have a choice in shadows that you cast, I always think that's really funny. You have a choice in the shadows that you cast.
I don't always cast two shadows.
But when I do, because I'm just trying to make sure that my structures, you know, they feel like what they are. Grabbing a little of my I might need to do some highlight shadow work here because I feel like it might have gotten a little out of hand.
Mm.
So sometimes it's just easier to paint it out
To make some adjustments.
and make some adjustments. It just really is. I don't always like to do that, but you know, sometimes it's just necessary. Just especially around things where there's satin or anything, it can be just important to do. I'll let that dry for a minute so I can come back and think about it again. Again, making sure that we have the lip of those shoes. A little shadow value. Just like finding a little highlight here and there can be super helpful, casting a little shadow here and there can be super helpful in locating what you're wanting. The other thing that we can come in and do is get a little bit of our ultramarine and white. Make sure that those spaces are also thoughtful. And as you come around the outside, you can make sure a nice flow. Make sure that those feel like how you want them to feel. Now, I want another little highlight in there. I think I'm pretty safe to put one in. I'm going to get some of my magenta and some of my Naples yellow light into another highlight mix. And right down the center of this, let's add that highlight just to put it back. And that looks a little more like what we were hoping to see. Lighten this one a bit. Get back, take it in. And so what we should have is nice little slippers with a bunch of little ribbons kind of collapsed there.
Mm-hmm.
We can go through and grab some white. Put some right there on the toe. Maybe right there on that ribbon. A couple places.
It just really makes it pop.
Just to help it pop where it would.
Mm.
Just a couple places you're sure a high reflection would be present. And that will also help get that sort of satin effect conceived within, the process of the shoe. And I feel like I'm fairly happy with that. And I'm ready to come in and to start talking about this gorgeous tulip.
Mm-hmm.
Are we ready to talk about the tulip?
I am.
You want to tell us what step it is, John?
Well, we're just finished step 6, and we're moving on to step 7.
7? Excellent. Let's begin the tulip. I think you guys are going to really like it. It's always fun to paint flowers. So once we have all that in, we can come back and we're going to begin the foundation of our tulip. And the first thing that I want you to do is to take a little bit of your phthalo green and your burnt sienna, and you're going to mix those together and get a very, very deep green. Right? You want a nice, deep, deep, deep color green. I can always even get a little ultramarine into it if I need to. I'm going to take this on my brush. I'm going to come here. Bring that back in a nice even stroke. I'm going to come across my ribbons. Oh, those ribbons that I fought for. In the other place I'm going to have this, I'm going to start doing a couple little strokes because these are interesting little leaves. We're going to bring a little dark valued leaf here. And you can see how I do this is I bring this off and I press in and I kind of twirl out to get those different values of that tulip leaf. There we go. And there's another one because they kind of, these particular leaves tend to open on the tulip very much like a petal does. So they're sort of wrapped and then pull open. Right. Then we're going to put in some basic kind of like, ooh, I'm the tulip. So let's take a little bit of my quinacridone. And in this case, we'll get just smidges of our cad yellow, not too much. We're going to just pull back the center little leaf here. Coming in, little side leaf. They're interesting how tulips sort of cup around each other. This is a little leaf that is peeking out. Not terrible. And then as you come back, you can get into your white and sort of blend wet into wet on the canvas here. The beginnings of that lighter base. So I just brush that right into the little tulip there.
Looks really cool.
And that, just bring a little bit on this outside edge here.
This comes in pretty quickly.
It does. It does. But that's just, you know, that first layer that we're going to want to do. Then I'm going to want to come here while that's having a dry. I'm going to bring some of my cad yellow into my nice green color. And I'm going to start to make some of the value changes that I might have on my stem.
For the highlights and lowlights?
The highlights and the lowlights. And I work on it, you know, stage by stage. And even as I come forward, I can get a little more of my yellow into that mix and even add a little white into it. On this edge here. Especially right here. Kind of help find those little bits of something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Make sure my green looks good on the coverage down here in the lower part of the stem, which is, you know, essentially darker. I like it. You may want to remember to grab, I'm going to use some of my ultramarine blue. And I come across here. And it's interesting. We're going to bring the shadow kind of at a corner and then across. Because what we're talking about is the way the tulip is casting a shadow. Right? You see that little bit there?
Mm.
We're just showing that shadow a smidge on our tulip. Looks pretty good. Into my yellow. And just a little more white. Couple of places, right? There we go. I think that's looking
Pretty good.
fairly nice. Okay, so for step 8, we're going to come in and finish the flower. You guys ready to tulip it up? So as I'm going forward, I'm going to continue to refine my initial tulip idea. I'm going to rinse out my brush, and I'm going to make a very, very light color. I'm going to take my white, and it's just got a titch of that pink in it, and it might even get some of my Naples yellow in there, so it's just a bit bright. And I may have to put on some more white, John.
Okay.
We're going to come underneath tulip here, and we're going to be brushing forward. I might need a little bit of that yellow green. Blend that at the bottom, just a bit. It's coming into the tulip. Putting on a little more white. We want to be able to really control the values around this sweetheart.
Mm.
Blending back. Brushing back in, kind of feathered blending. And what I'm going to definitely have to do is come back out with some white. Focusing it kind of there. Looks good. I may need a couple of spots, if you can even grab the little highlight color, where some of this sort of comes out on the tulip.
Mm-hmm.
Because they tend to be quite expressive in their color space. It'll be nice to get a little Naples yellow into that. Doesn't that look nice? Gotta do a similar thing over here. So a little of that color, and I'm gonna get my white, even though I have more white. Blending that up over here. Get a little bit of our green into it. Or just blending a bit of that, kiss of that green from the stem of the flower going up. Let's come along here. A little bit about I don't mind. I'm back with the dark value. Looks pretty nice. I do want to blend a little bit of my light back up into it like we did before, but I'll let it be a bit pinked because it's on more of the shadow side. Some yellow. I'm going to hit the tip here. Maybe a little bit right there. That looks good.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to come in with a pink on that, but it'll be a deeper pink for this inside petal. Bring that little shadow down. And sometimes it's great to get just the smidge of a highlight to put, say, here on the ridge and a little bit on those outer petals. And back into that pink here, but I'm only going to touch the edge. I want the deep value to sort of keep these almost separate from each other. Can you see how that is?
I do.
Now, while I'm here, I may take a little bit of my ultramarine and some of my magenta, and I get that wonderful purple, right? That we like so much, or I like so much.
I like it.
Putting a little shadow right there. It's nice sometimes to add a little shadow just to delineate the petal spaces. It's just a small touch, but I feel like it's what I want. I'm gonna rinse out deeply and get a little bit of my Naples yellow. Add some there. A little bit right there. Just kind of trying to create a little touch, a little kiss. And that is that, sir.
That was pretty quick.
That was not bad, right? So we've got our tulip and our shoes, and the tulip and the shoes are all matchy-matchy, which is kind of cool.
Let me just take a look at those while you get ready to sign them.
And I'm going to sign it. The color is the question, though, right? Obviously, pink, though, I think. Going to sign it in Ballet Slipper Pink. Woo! There we go. So that was certainly a journey into light and dark and middle range colors, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
We did it, though. I love it.
I like it, too.
Well, hopefully that was a big delight with your day, and I really enjoyed my creative time with you. I hoped you enjoyed your creative time with me. As I mentioned, this is a painting. You could do just this one, but in the effort to entice you to come back and do the rest of the program, we are going to be painting the adorable fuzzy fox tomorrow, and I think you're really going to enjoy him. It's really important to just take time to be creative and enjoy yourself. I want you to be good to yourself, be good to each other, and I'd like to see you at an easel really soon. Bye-bye!